I've been trying to tell my friend that I like him for a few days now, but he doesn't believe me and says I'm making fun of him. Realizing I liked my best friend, Sam, wasn't some cinematic moment under a rain-soaked sky. It was me sitting in my parked car, gripping the steering wheel and muttering about how doomed I was. We'd been friends for 5 years, comfortable, easy, and perfectly platonic. At least, until last week when he laughed at one of my terrible jokes, and something inside me shifted. The realization hit hard. I liked him. Not in a casual he's cool to hang out with way, but in the I suddenly notice how his sleeves are rolled up and how he chews his lip when he's focused way. After days of overthinking, I decided to tell him. Straightforward. Honest. We were close enough for that, right? But when I finally blurted it out during one of our routine TV hangouts, he just laughed. The kind of laugh you let out when someone tells you Bigfoot is your next-door neighbor. I tried clarifying, but the damage was done. He genuinely thought I was joking. The next day, I attempted to set the record straight. I approached it calmly, rephrased my words, and made sure my voice didn't waver. But Sam, bless his oblivious heart, brushed it off again, this time with a playful grin and a dismissive wave of his hand. It stung more than I expected. I wasn't sure if it was worse that he didn't take me seriously or that I felt so embarrassingly exposed. But one thing was clear, I couldn't just drop it. Not yet. After 2 failed attempts, I decided to regroup. Maybe it was my delivery. Too casual? Too vague? Did I smirk when I said it? I spent an embarrassing amount of time analyzing my facial expressions in the bathroom mirror. Meanwhile, Sam carried on completely unaware, texting me memes and asking if I wanted to grab coffee after work. He was acting normal, which somehow made it worse. I considered writing him a letter, something dramatic and Jane Austen-esque, but it felt too ridiculous. So, I went with plan B, subtle hints. Surely, if I dropped enough breadcrumbs, he'd catch on. I started complimenting him more. Nothing too wild, just casual things like, "You're really good at this," or, "You're kind of awesome." But Sam, ever the golden retriever of a man, just grinned and said, "Thanks, bud." Bud. Friend-zoned so hard it echoed. Next, I tried lingering eye contact. Not in a creepy way, just meaningful. But Sam, being Sam, thought I was zoning out or maybe had a migraine. At one point, he actually handed me a bottle of Advil and asked if I was feeling okay. Every effort backfired. Subtlety was clearly not my strong suit, and Sam was about as perceptive as a brick wall when it came to romance. It felt like I was living in a sitcom, except the laugh track was just me, alone in my room, cringing at my reflection in the mirror. After 2 failed attempts, I decided to regroup. Maybe it was my delivery. Too casual? Too vague? Did I smirk when I said it? I spent an embarrassing amount of time analyzing my facial expressions in the bathroom mirror. Meanwhile, Sam carried on completely unaware, texting me memes and asking if I wanted to grab coffee after work. He was acting normal, which somehow made it worse. I considered writing him a letter, something dramatic and Jane Austen-esque, but it felt too ridiculous. So, I went with plan B, subtle hints. Surely, if I dropped enough breadcrumbs, he'd catch on. I started complimenting him more. Nothing too wild, just casual things like, "You're really good at this," or, "You're kind of awesome." But Sam, ever the golden retriever of a man, just grinned and said, "Thanks, bud." Bud. Friend-zoned so hard it echoed. Next, I tried lingering eye contact. Not in a creepy way, just meaningful. But Sam, being Sam, thought I was zoning out or maybe had a migraine. At one point, he actually handed me a bottle of Advil and asked if I was feeling okay. Every effort backfired. Subtlety was clearly not my strong suit, and Sam was about as perceptive as a brick wall when it came to romance. It felt like I was living in a sitcom, except the laugh track was just me, alone in my room, cringing at my reflection in the mirror. Subtlety had failed me. Twice. No, thrice, if you count the sandwich shop incident. So, I did what any self-respecting adult in a romantic crisis would do. I made a plan. A real plan. Step 1. Create the perfect setting. Something cozy, private, but not overly romantic. A neutral zone. Sam's place worked. It was familiar territory, and if things went south, at least I'd have easy access to his fridge snacks. Step 2. Practice. I spent an absurd amount of time rehearsing in front of my bathroom mirror. I tried every tone: casual, serious, lighthearted, poetic. At one point, I even tried finger guns and immediately promised myself I'd never do that again. Step 3. Don't chicken out. The night arrived. I showed up at Sam's place with pizza because everyone knows emotional confessions go down easier with carbs. We settled on the couch, a crime documentary playing in the background while Sam provided commentary like he was auditioning to narrate Dateline. My moment came during a lull in conversation. I opened my mouth, ready to finally say it clearly, without jokes, without room for misunderstanding. But right then, Sam launched into a completely unrelated story about some guy at work who microwaved fish in the break room. I bit my tongue and let him finish because microwaved fish is a universal villain and deserved our full attention. But every time I tried again, something came up. His phone rang, the dog next door started barking like it was being possessed, or Sam would casually ask, "Hey, you okay? You're acting weird." "Yes, Sam, I am acting weird because I'm trying to tell you I like you, and you're making this impossible." The night ended without me saying anything. Again, I drove home feeling like the human embodiment of a deflated balloon. My grand plan had failed before it even got off the ground. Clearly, I wasn't cut out for this level of vulnerability. But then, just as I was pulling into my driveway, an idea hit me, a final, desperate Hail Mary. If he wouldn't believe my words, maybe he'd believe something else. Desperation makes you bold, or maybe just reckless. Either way, I decided to do something completely out of character. I texted him. Not just a normal text, though. No memes, no casual, "Hey, you up?" Instead, I wrote the words I'd been failing to say for days. "Sam, I like you. Like you. And I'm not joking, I'm not messing with you, and I'm not pulling some prank. I actually genuinely like you. Please don't laugh this time." My thumb hovered over the send button. I paced my living room. I briefly considered throwing my phone out the window and moving to a remote cabin in the woods. But before I could overthink it any further, I hit send and immediately threw my phone face down on the couch like it was a grenade about to explode. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Then an entire eternity. When I finally peeked at my phone, there was no response. The message was marked as read. My stomach plummeted into the earth's core. I spent the rest of the night alternating between existential dread and aggressively eating cereal straight from the box. The next morning, still no reply. By noon, I convinced myself I'd ruined everything. That Sam wasn't texting back because he was carefully drafting a polite rejection, or, worse, figuring out how to ghost me while still occasionally sending dog memes. By the time 3 p.m. rolled around, I'd resigned myself to my fate. I texted him something casual, asking if we were still on for trivia night at the bar. His reply came almost instantly. "Yeah, of course. Pick you up at 7. That was it. No mention of my confession. No awkwardness. Just normalcy. I stared at my phone for a long time. Either Sam was a master of emotional avoidance, or he genuinely hadn't processed my message. Trivia night was going to be interesting. By the time Sam's car pulled up in front of my place, I had gone through every possible scenario in my head. Maybe he'd been so shocked by my text he forgot how to respond. Maybe he thought I was still joking. Maybe he'd bring it up casually between rounds, like, "Hey, pass me the nachos. Also, about your confession." But when I got in the car, Sam was just Sam. Same easy grin, same dumb playlist blaring questionable indie rock, same casual conversation about work gossip. Not a single flicker of acknowledgement about the text. AT trivia night. Everything felt painfully normal. Sam ordered our usual drinks, argued passionately about a question involving the Lord of the Rings, and made fun of my awful handwriting on the answer sheet. I found myself watching him between rounds, wondering how someone could be so relaxed after receiving a text like that. It wasn't until the final round, during a lull in conversation, that I caught him staring at me. For a split second, something flashed across his face, uncertainty, maybe even guilt, but then he looked away. The realization hit me like a sack of bricks. He was avoiding it. Sam wasn't oblivious, he wasn't clueless, he was actively dodging the topic. On the ride home, the silence felt heavier. Every time I opened my mouth to bring it up, my courage evaporated. Instead, I settled for staring out the window and listening to Sam hum along to the radio. When we pulled up to my apartment, he gave me the same lopsided smile he always did. "See you tomorrow?" I nodded, barely managing a yeah, sure. But as I climbed out of the car, I realized something. If Sam wasn't going to address it, then I had to. Before I shut the door, I leaned down, looked him square in the eyes, and said, Sam, we need to talk. Tomorrow. No excuses. His smile faltered. For the first time all night, he looked nervous. Okay, he said softly. I shut the door and walked inside, my heart pounding in my ears. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, we were finally going to talk about it. For real this time. The next day felt like I was awaiting trial. I spent the morning pacing my apartment, rephrasing my words, deleting half-written notes on my phone, and wondering if I could fake my own death to avoid this conversation. Sam texted me around noon. Be there at 3. Bringing snacks. Snacks? Who brings snacks to a life-altering conversation? When he showed up, arms full of chips and sodas, I realized 2 things. 1, Sam's coping mechanism was apparently feeding people, and 2, he looked nervous. He kept rubbing the back of his neck, his grin flickering in and out like bad Wi-Fi. We sat on the couch. The snacks sat between us like a neutral third party trying to mediate. Okay, I said, breaking the silence. Are we going to talk about it, or are we just going to stress-eat Doritos until we implode? Sam let out a short laugh and looked down at his hands. I got your text, he said. I nodded. Yeah, I gathered that. There was a long pause. Then he sighed, one of those deep, chest-heaving sighs that come right before someone drops a truth bomb. I didn't think you were joking, he said quietly. Not really. I didn't know how to respond. His words hung in the air, and I felt something tighten in my chest. I'm an idiot sometimes, he continued. I thought maybe if I ignored it, I wouldn't have to deal with the chance of messing things up between us. My heart was hammering so loud I could barely hear myself think. And now? I asked. Sam finally looked up at me, and for once, he wasn't smiling. He wasn't dodging or joking or brushing me off. Now, I think I've been an idiot long enough, he said. It wasn't a grand declaration. There were no fireworks, no swelling music in the background. Just Sam, sitting across from me, looking both terrified and hopeful at the same time. We didn't lean in for a dramatic kiss or have some poetic movie moment. Instead, he reached out, grabbed my hand, and gave it a squeeze. Simple, but enough. Want to go grab dinner? He asked after a moment, his grin cautiously returning. Yeah, I said, my face breaking into a smile. Yeah, I'd like that. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And honestly, after everything, a start was more than enough.
What would you do in a similar situation? Share your opinion in the comments.